Hey YouTube, what's going on? Welcome back to the 2025 Outdoor Cannabis Garden Tour Series. It's been 18 days since the previous outdoor gardening vlog, and this is the 6th garden update of the 2025 season. Over the past 18 days, temperatures have continued to increase, so we're now consistently in the low 90s. We also received a ton of rain, so the weather's been really amazing so far. But with that being said, let's go through the garden really quickly, showing off each of the plants and talking quickly about what I've done over the past 2.5 weeks. As always, we're starting off with our slime ball right here. I really haven't done much maintenance on this plant at all. Beautiful structure, not too lanky, not too stout. Let me just give you a quick look at the underside of the canopy, and let me give you a look at the top of the canopy as well. I'll also try to show you the backs of the plant as well. This plant is probably about 7 feet or so, maybe slightly taller. Moving on to our next plant, we have another slime ball, and similar to the first, I haven't done much on this plant. The structure is already really nice, doesn't need too much done to it, not too lanky, which is nice. I don't anticipate having to do too much to keep her around the height of the fence back there, but let me give you a quick look at the underside of the canopy, as well as a look at the top of the canopy as well. So this plant is a little bit taller than the previous slime ball, but only slightly. Moving on to our next plant in the garden, we have our GSD F6, and this is one of the plants that I have stretched heavily, where I pulled out these stems at a very drastic angle. Usually I like to keep the stems at about a 45-degree angle, maybe slightly steeper, but these stems down here I've had to pull at a much flatter angle just because this plant is very, very lanky and she wants to stretch. So I've done my best to kind of pull all the tall stems down to the side. I still have some work left to be done, but it's kind of difficult deciding how I want to deal with all the lanky branches and whatnot. But let me give you a quick look at the underside of the canopy, as well as a look at the top of the canopy. So this plant is a little bit more lanky and a little bit more sparse than the slime balls, so I really have to watch out and make sure that this plant doesn't stretch too quickly. Moving on to our next plant in the garden, we have our chosen one, and this is probably one of my favorite plants just in terms of structure. This is probably the closest we'll get to indica just in terms of morphology. This plant is very, very stout. I'm not too worried about the plant getting too tall. I'm just trying to push the plant out and get it as wide as I can, but aside from that, I'm not too worried. Beautiful plant, very quick rebound on all the stems, beautiful and strong. Really like the growth on this one. I wonder how the flower will turn out. But let me give you a quick look at the top of the canopy. This plant is probably 6.5 feet tall, something like that. I don't think she's quite 7 feet. Moving on to our next plant in the garden, we have another chosen one. Structure on this one isn't quite as stout. It's been much more easy to push this plant out. It's a little bit lankier, a little bit less stout, so the rebound on the stem pole isn't quite as quick to rebound. Very beautiful plant. You can see that's clearly the dominant node back there, so I'll see if I can pull that stem to the back instead of topping it, but we'll see what happens. These definitely look like two separate phenotypes, so hopefully that's the case. But let me give you a quick look at the top of the canopy. The garden's been growing really well, almost too well, so I've been very worried about not letting these plants get too tall. In an ideal world, I would just have 20-foot marijuana plants just growing out in the open, but unfortunately I can't do that. But with that being said, let's talk about this plant right here. This is one of our Clown Royale crossed with the Bear Creek Kush. And this is one of the lankiest plants in the garden, kind of similar to the GSD, although this one is a lot more bushy. Very lanky growth pattern, and I think that probably owes to the Bear Creek Kush lineage that this plant has. So this plant is stretching really rapidly. I thought the plant would have a lot of difficulty because of the early damage and re-veg that has had to happen, but this plant has really taken off, and I'm super worried about keeping this plant from getting too tall. I've done my best to kind of pull the stems to the sides, but it's not really helping. This plant is easily over 7 feet, and if left unattended, you'll probably get up to 8 feet by the time I film the next garden update. But beautiful plant, beautiful purple stems. The main issue is just keeping the plant from getting too tall. Definitely a sativa growth structure. Moving on to our next plant in the garden, we have another Clown Royale crossed with the Bear Creek Kush, and very similar morphology on this plant as to the previous Clown Royale Bear Creek Kush cross. So you see right here, I'm trying to pull the tall stems out to the side. This is clearly the dominant node right here, and look how lanky this is. Like, geez, look, from here to here it's like 6 inches. Like, that's, and this is at the top of the plant, so you really wouldn't expect to see such significant stretching. But let me give you a quick look at the base of the plant. So this plant, the previous Bear Creek Kush, Clown Royale, and the GSD F6 are all really lanky sativa plants. So doing my best to keep them low, but it's been very difficult thus far. Moving on to our next plant in the garden, we have our albino fire skunk, and this plant is doing all right. Not super amazing structure or anything, not too lanky, not too bushy. There's really nothing too remarkable about this growth structure. You have a big empty gap in the canopy right here, so I may have to pull this down to the side and maybe pull this towards the front, but she's looking pretty decent. No issues thus far. I've just done my best to pull the stems out, and you can see the angle of this stem, and all these ones towards the bottom of the plant are a lot more flat than typically I would like. And the reason I try to keep them from being so flat is because once the plant starts to put on flower, that weight will pull the stems down. So typically you want to have like about a 45 or even steeper angle in order to have the plants be able to really handle all that flower weight come harvest time. But pretty decent. Moving on to our next plant in the garden, we have our skittle mittens from Freak Genetics. Lovely strain, and the structure on this one has gotten really nice. Very even growth relatively. You can see the angle of the canopy is pretty flat. No one specific node is dominant. I haven't had to do too much pruning and whatnot aside from the early maintenance. But beautiful plant. This is probably one of my favorites in terms of overall structure, besides the first chosen one. So really big fan of Freak Genetics. One of my favorite breeders, definitely. You can see towards the back there's some empty space that I have to fill up. Moving on to our next plant in the garden, we have a Stareyed, also from Freak Genetics. Good structure on this one as well. This one is a little bit more top dominant. The canopy isn't quite as even in terms of energy distribution, so you can see we have about 2 or 3 tops that are fighting for that dominant spot, but good growth on her. Nothing bad to say about this plant thus far. All these plants in the back have really good sunlight, so I think these, you can kind of tell. Let me give you a quick look at the top of the canopy. Got a beautiful hedge going on. Really enjoying how this year is going. The weather's been amazing. We got an excellent start. Moving on to the next plant in the garden, we have our 7 Hills from Freak Genetics. This plant is probably my least favorite, just in terms of structure and everything. Like, very bushy growth. Look, you can barely see any sunlight penetrate through this canopy. It's super duper dense. I haven't cut into this plant in several weeks. I probably want to film a video of me kind of pruning the plant and give my thoughts on that, just because it's probably like a teachable moment. But interesting plant. Not too sure what to expect. This is kind of like one of the plants that would definitely have fungal issues later in the year if I don't clean up that bushy canopy. Moving on to the next plant in the garden, we have our Meltdown, one of the most vigorous plants in the garden. The main thing I want to focus on is kind of getting a more even growth balance on everything. It's kind of like still in the freeform stage, sort of, where the structure isn't super well defined. It's kind of just bushing out however it can. But beautiful plant. A little bit worried that this plant may get too big, especially because the fence back here isn't quite as tall as towards the front of the garden. But let me give you a quick look at the top of the canopy. But beautiful growth on all the plants this year. Really like how things are progressing. It's kind of crazy to think how much longer we have in the growth season, but this week I also want to give you a look at the back side of the plants. I really haven't done that too often, but it's a beautiful time too. This is the back side of our Meltdown here. The back side of our 7 Hills, so super duper bushy, like super duper crazy growth. This is the Stareyed. This is the skittle mittens right here. You have a bit of an empty gap. I'm not quite sure how I will fill that. This is the albino fire skunk right here. You can tell she has reached the back, which is really nice. I've done my best to kind of widen the plants as best I can, even if the angle isn't ideal. This is our Clam Royale Bear Creek Kush cross. You can see I've done my best to really pull whatever stems I can to the side so I can pull the more central stems out to the side. So I'm just trying to make space wherever I can. This is the chosen one. This is the stretchier pheno. This is the other chosen one. This is the more stiff, vigorous pheno. Look how quick this bounces back. Beautiful. Really love that. This is the GSD F6. This is probably my second least favorite plant behind the 7 Hills. Super lanky, not super bushy yet. Still don't quite know what I'm doing with the structure of the plant. And this is our slime ball right here. So you can tell there's significant space back here that has to be filled, and the plant isn't quite as tall back here because the fence is quite tall back here, so the lighting isn't quite as strong back here, which is why the back has lagged behind the front. But here's a nice tall stem which is still reaching and competing for light, and this is our final slime ball right here. So just wanted to give you guys another quick update of the garden. Things are going well pretty so far, so the next garden update will be in about another 2 weeks. And as always, thanks so much for tuning in. I will catch you guys in the next one. Later.